everyone. Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 608, being recorded on December 16, 2020. I'm Sebastian Peak.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Howard.
And
I'm Brad Van Spoonberg.
there you go. If you want to be alerted when we go live and then eventually start the show 10 to 20 minutes
I want to
later,
be alerted.
go to pcpro.com/subscribe. This is the only thing that we use that list for. And you can support whatever is happening right now at patreon.com/pcper. Because this is art, as I say most weeks, and you need to, it's a way to support the arts. And we have some people to thank, don't we, Brett?
2 new patrons. One, I think I mentioned late last week. They were a late joiner, actually, on the day we were doing the podcast. It's surprising. We talk about it, and actually people sign up to Patreon while we're on the air. And if you do sign up to Patreon, I'll definitely, interrupt whatever anybody's saying and just jump right in and just stomp all over them and just say, hey, new patron. I'll definitely do that. Or if you change your name and I notice that I get an email, I'll read that out if it's readable. There are some of them that aren't.
Yeah,
some of them are.
reason.
Maximum 100 times per podcast.
Yes, no more than 100 times will I interrupt this show for an important message. But 2 new patrons, and that's, I hope I pronounced this name right, Hossam Wali, and James Peterson, excuse my Americanizing.
Oh, Jim.
Hossam Wali.
Actually, I don't know.
Jim. Yeah, Jim. Yep, James Patterson. So thank you guys. Appreciate the support very much.
Thank you. And
yes,
I apologize. I feel like that's only appropriate.
Yeah.
The second thing we do after the intro every week is to
Number 2, my lord. Number 2.
Seamlessly transition as I wait for Josh to finish his beverage. Camera 2. Josh, you're in camera 2. Josh,
He's going to disappoint us.
Josh, do we have a burger update or any kind of update from your world?
So I did have a burger today. It was the Popper, but I've shown that multiple times before. That's the, like a jalapeno Popper burger. So double patties, regular bun, cream cheese, a raspberry chipotle, and covered with jalapenos. So it's quite tasty. Sadly, when I was trying to drive east out of town, I encountered this sign.
Josh, that seems unusually
So I
strong,
had to stop and turn around because my car is only.
Did you
rated
have
for
to stop or turn around, or did the
220
wind do
miles an
that for you?
Josh, I'm sorry. What is your car rated for again?
It 220,
220, 225, whatever
but
it
I
takes.
got to go straight into the wind, and I'll tell you, it was pushing me backwards. But I was getting so much downforce.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, and that's important
Such
when you're on the open range.
So was that accurate? Was it actually gusting that fast on the mountain?
Yes, Sebastian.
Yes, totally. Yes, absolutely. Though in Yellowstone, when I was growing up, probably it was about 16, 17, they had a windstorm that clocked in at 117 miles an hour, and it just blew down a tremendous amount of pine trees.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot, but yeah, 355 was, it's another, light breeze and layer of dice.
Hey, before we start getting away from the weather, right now we're having like an ice storm here, and all the trees are doing the droopiness outside right now. So if I lose power, it's because I got ice stormed and, went
What
dark.
kind of trees are these? Are these like palm trees in your beachfront
No, they're
property right
pine
next to the micro
trees.
center?
That's in the podcast. We're going to talk about
I saw
beachfront
making fun of
property
Brett in the podcast.
I didn't-
show notes.
You know what? I didn't use my name.
Moving on to our first story, Jeremy posted news about the new support in Vulkan for ray tracing. You can get it right now. I think it was the driver update of a day or two ago.
Yesterday.
For NVIDIA.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the latest one for AMD also includes it.
It does now. I've
Indeed.
heard some things.
And
Yes.
And Quake 2 RTX is now Quake 2 Vulkan ray tracing.
Yep. And we'll switch back
How
and
cool
forth.
is that? Yeah.
That's the neat part.
I need to get that,
That
up and
is-
running here. This is embarrassing. Who was
I know,
playing that?
I've-
Was it you, Jeremy? Who was playing that?
I was playing it last night.
Yeah.
I could get a solid 45, 50 frames a second on my 1080.
Yeah, but you're on a 1080, and somebody accused
know.
you of that not being enough.
It's not. That's why I didn't actually bother with the first go around, because I knew it would be like original Crisis slideshow quality. Even with the dynamic resolution, which is what I was going with, except going down, not up. But with this, flapping back and forth, I mean, honestly, when I switched over to the RTX as opposed to OpenGL, it was more, huge hit on performance, of course, but also, you noticed it more with RTX as opposed to OpenGL, although OpenGL was still visible. So, it's $5 to buy the whole game, or you get the first 3 levels, which will probably be enough for you, because, good Lord, this thing's old, for free. Just pop over to Steam, away you go.
What did you think of the ray trace, the fully path traced version that you played? Or was it?
Yes.
Do you have
Well, I mean,
screenshots?
I didn't think of that.
You really weren't thinking ahead, were you? With your 1080.
It had been raining in my kitchen earlier that day, and so I'd actually drunk about a half bottle of gin by the time I decided to, after mopping up everything and getting the kittens out and washing them and such. So no, I wasn't really thinking.
Common problem, actually.
So this
But
is
anyway, your
sadly in this
impressions
house.
of seeing the ray tracing in Quake 2. I mean, you have fond memories of Quake 2 back in 1997,
Yep.
98.
So this is not.
What do you think?
Is this the same project, or is this the version that's available in like Steam? So this is not.
Yeah,
the
there's
Path
a-
Trace Quake 2 project.
So honestly,
No, this is the RTX Quake 2 from
Yeah.
NVIDIA.
so
Let's make that very clear.
I'm wandering around and then using the basic gun because it makes nice glowy path along as you're shooting. And I'm thinking, for Quake 2, this is absolutely brilliant. I would have lost my mind back when I was a kid playing this. But I'm also thinking, any modern game engines can replicate the same sort of lighting effects without using ray tracing. And so I'm fiddling around and just enjoying it.
Sorta.
I'm sorry. Heretic? Did I just hear that? Okay, we'll talk about that later.
What, the
Heretic.
game Heretic? Okay, hold on.
No, I meant saying that, you know what, you could have just done this without RTX. It could have just been...
Well, you couldn't have in Quake 2. It didn't exist. Like, there was no way to fake it back then. With
Okay.
this, those lighting effects were. And then, I realized that there was something weird on one of the panels that you're supposed to push. And I walk up and I realize, wait a second. I can see myself. I can see the entire room behind it. So it's
Okay,
not.
that's
I
cool.
didn't notice
Cool.
it until suddenly it caught me up my corner of my eye as this looks wrong, and realized and walked up to it that okay, the reflective
No, it
surfaces
looks
are nice.
right.
And then I started playing with the water, and so I ended up just sort of, well, also try to jump for about 10 minutes before I gave up on it, and realized that, yeah, okay, this does look a lot nicer, and it's not something that could be done without ray tracing, without looking incredibly, stupidly cheesy. And of course, since the first level doesn't have huge amounts of lights on it, you didn't get so much reflection off of the shotgun barrel, and that looks absolutely gorgeous. Occasionally I did, usually because I was getting shot by something. So yes and no. I didn't really notice it until something caught my eye, and then I started to notice it a bit more.
I know, it's the effect is so subtle. You're running around, it's like, that looks pretty nice. And then it's like, there's something that just hits you. And it's like, I've never seen that in a game before. That's kind of unique. And then, it's you notice a lot of the little things. And of course, with the more frenetic a game is, the less you notice the graphics.
Yeah, in certain games, if it's just ray trace shadows or ray trace reflections, I find it hard to tell sometimes. But when it's the entire thing, like fully path traced games to me like this, these are the best example. Because this, it looks like a totally different game.
Yeah, I mean, you've got highlights, you got, the shadows are actually
shadows.
looking shadows.
Yeah, the shadows are a big deal. The lighting itself, but I don't want to just have to look at the gun barrel to see. Oh yeah, that's like ray tracing.
Well,
the
quality.
barrel.
There's a quality of the lighting that is okay. Remember when Half-Life 2 came out, and of course
There's a perfect example right there.
We'd had Doom 3 come out, and Carmack was raving about we did the lighting and how things are done, and the shadows are accurate, and blah 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 blah. And then suddenly Half-Life 2 came out, and just the quality of the lighting of it was, even though it was all pre-baked in there.
Yep.
I mean, it looked so much better. It was immersive. It was very natural looking as compared to, the really hard shadows in Doom 3. And yeah, it was, and this is that same kind of jump when you have a fully path traced game and you're experiencing it for the first time and you're like, okay, at first I wasn't impressed, but then I started moving around. I started to do this, I did that. And then some dynamic things happened around me and it like blew my mind because it was really cool. That's the best way I can explain it.
Yeah. I mean, it's got me to the point where regardless of, I probably, whatever will come up first for availability, a 3080 or a 6800. At this point, I'm not absolutely desperately in love with ray tracing, but I'd like to experience it more and find out if I am going to be. And since they're pretty equivalent pricing up here in Canada. Before I was playing around with this, I was solidly, I want to try the Infinity Cache. I want the 6800 XT. Now it's like, you know what? If suddenly a 3080 is available and the 6800 XTs aren't, I might say screw it and get it. Just to try it. Like, pick up CyberPunk and, just sort of wander around and stare at stuff.
Yeah, you get a 30 to 40% increase in performance using NVIDIA, and then that increases dramatically when you start using DLSS. And I mean, that's just a 1-2 punch for any of these DXR games that are coming out, whether it's Watch Dogs. I don't know what else.
There's
a few. Cyberpunk is RTX.
Clearly.
Cyberpunk is RTX. So you can't.
Well, Cyberpunk is DXR, I believe, but currently exclusive to NVIDIA.
Yeah.
But
so
you can turn it on AMD.
You just have to alter some things.
You could.
It's not going to work, but you can turn it on.
Yeah, you can turn it on. You can. Anyhow,
here's the concerning thing, and I don't think this is on our rundown, but I saw this the other day. This is PC Gamer, and they did a little comparison of the 6800 XT versus the 3080 in Vulkan ray tracing tests.
Wait, so you mean dedicated hardware is working better than...
Yeah. Well, I mean, AMD said they had dedicated hardware, kind of.
Well, they do, but...
It's sort of mostly dedicated hardware.
I heard a rumor it was repurposed shaders. What do you think about that?
It's in a relationship, but it's not sure it's fully dedicated yet.
What you're saying is that a certain portion of each core is dedicated to ray tracing, but it's essentially a shader core that's been pre-reserved.
It's almost like a specific. Okay, this is gonna probably.
Okay, let's talk architecture,
wrong.
Josh. Let's go.
Hit us.
Probably wrong.
Camera 2.
But it's almost like it's a specific dispatch unit in the shader core with all those vector units, and it modifies the instructions that all these vector units work on to give back some ray tracing ability, but it's not as single purpose as the NVIDIA RTX units that they have in there. Does that make any sense?
Context.
I mean, I barely know anything about this because AMD doesn't want to talk about it. But it's a piece of hardware, but essentially it's kind of software because it's optimizing the workload to run on the vector units that they already have rather than it just being a separate piece, because the engineers have said in the background, it's like, yeah, it's essentially software based, but it's an optimized software based. And so it's in there in the pipeline and it works like it's supposed to, but it's not dedicated like RTX stuff.
Well, you can clearly see it in the graphs
Clear
that
as mud,
Sebastian just showed. I mean, it's a lift, it's a boost,
It is.
but it really doesn't get you much more than halfway there. So, I mean,
Yeah.
nice try.
It just looks like last year's charts of when they enabled Pascal, and you could do ray tracing on the shader cores.
like
It was the
1080
same
Ti
disparity
RTX.
there. Yeah, like 1080 Ti was not even. Was it up to a 2060? I can't remember.
Oh
I
God,
think
no.
you're about right. I thought it was.
think it was
I thought
less.
close. Well, really? Hmm.
So this is like running a 6800 XT is like running a 2080 Ti level for ray tracing. But of course, the 30 series was a huge improvement for overall performance.
And I still think that the 2000 series will still be better overall than the 6800
I should do some,
but
I should
not
do
by
some
much.
Yeah.
But it's getting there. But it's just
That would be
software.
That would be an
Software
interesting
support.
benchmark. Actually, I think you're right.
How much can they improve? How much can AMD improve by just optimizing drivers for specific titles?
Because it's
Maybe
software.
5 to 10%.
You think so? Yeah.
Because
not-
it is a very specific workload, and when you're taking all those vector units and applying it to this workload, you're taking away from other shading capabilities. Because let me tell you, the workload is heavy. I mean, it's just you're shooting rays, computationally intense, bounces. How many bounces you program in, materials, all of that stuff. You're taking away computational resources from other shading work.
We just need dedicated ray tracing hardware, like the PhysX card. We need a ray tracing card.
And that's what NVIDIA has.
I
Their
know.
RTX ray tracing units are, and that's why their chips are so huge.
And as you know,
They got a lot of
Josh,
stuff, not only RTX, but they got tensor stuff in there as well. And so I mean, it is NVIDIA's got the full meal deal. And let me tell you,
that's
lot
not a
of people
popular
are not
opinion right
happy
now
with
on
NVIDIA
social media, Josh.
what?
It's not popular to be praising them and their technologies right now.
Well, I was.
You have to be careful.
That's funny. I was going to talk about that.
Yeah,
because,
let's talk about it.
Yeah, they are making waves.
That's up
in
later
between.
this podcast.
Let's talk about.
Get me back on track.
Let's talk about another train wreck. Speaking of tracks, let's talk about what has happened so far with Cyberpunk 2077.
Hey, Trainwreck is
Apparently
pretty strong.
Too many dildos.
Dildo
apparently.
is another word.
Well, I dare not click on odd discoveries in if you're talking.
Yes.
That would be the too many
Okay.
dildos.
All right. I do
Apparently
not want to
that-
click on that one. Excellent.
There are an uncomfortable amount of dildos for some people in this game.
Oh, great. I'll just accept all cookies.
Hey, Jeremy, that was a random gifting, random find. That's what they said. It's just part of the loot boxing. I don't mean it in the
Well,
EA
except for the
sense.
one that you can equip like Saints Row, apparently, which
Okay, yeah,
is even
there's
worse.
that. There's one that you can equip as a weapon. I did read that. But other than that, I mean, from what I've read, it's like there's a lot of clipping going on, a lot of cars that shouldn't be floating that can float.
Right. We
and
could
a lot
show one of
people looking for objects.
the clip shows of various glitches in action, but
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I think the biggest issue is going to be reliability. Like, is the game crashing, and performance issues.
I hear it's pretty fun on last generation consoles.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's
Josh.
the big one right there.
right.
Yeah.
Bad enough that they were urging people to seek refunds if they could, and of course, that's not always going to be possible when you've already
Hey.
been playing the game for a number of hours.
Rewind this a little bit. They
Okay.
delayed it 5 weeks, 6 weeks.
That's not enough.
We're gonna get. Well, that was the excuse, right? About a month or so ago.
Well,
We're gonna
it
get
was
last gen
originally
console all squared up.
Well, maybe it wasn't
Yeah.
even
Supposed to be in
running
April.
before. I
don't
mean,
know.
we don't know what
Yeah, that's a
state
good
it was
point.
in 2 months ago.
That's a good point.
But you give developers 20-hour days, 7 days a week for 5 weeks, and they can get it releasable. Who needs sleep?
You know, okay. Here's my impression, and I'm willing to give these guys a bit of a break, not because they're paying us or anything like that. This was an adventurous title. It was complex, ambitious, whatever you say, and that's gonna. I mean, you're gonna be paying a price for these especially if they're trying to hit the holiday season and you know it's going to come out in a very unoptimized form. There are going to be bugs. You're going to pay the price for it, admittance. And I think people have looked at No Man's Sky as what a developer should do. Yes, they released a product. It was not in a finished state when they did it, but they kept adding to it. People kept buying it. They continued to add to it. People would buy it. They'd start playing it again. Word of mouth, more people would buy in because the developers support it. They added features, added to the story. They fixed all the big problems, and now No Man's Sky is a really neat title. And I think that we're going to start seeing some of this stuff with other developers. You know, maybe not CD Projekt, but they have a pretty good track record. I mean, remember The Witcher 1, when originally released, was again very ambitious, buggy, whatever. But then they kept patching it, and then they released an enhanced edition that was free for people who had bought it. And it just raised the level up so that, you know, video card OEMs would buy big lots of Witcher Enhanced Edition to bundle with their video cards because, you know, it had a lot of extras in there. It had, you know, tessellation. It had, what was that thing where you had many like people running on the screen at the same time, or, you know, like Asteroid. I can't remember the demo was called, but it was an instancing thing where they had individual objects, but because they were able to kind of instance them in, they could have, you know, thousands of them, and it would hardly impact performance. I can't remember the damn name. I mean, ATI had a demo of guys running down a hill. Yeah,
I'm stuck on the Total War way of doing it.
Yeah,
which is also amazing. But yeah,
it's the same thing. But I mean, they're taking heat because they did release an unfinished product, and they did it before the holiday season. And there's going to be people who play it and hit something, and they're going to be so pissed off, they're going to get a refund. But I mean, they came out and said, "Hey, we've got a major update in a couple of days. We've got one within January that's going to be a major update, and we've got another in February that is going to be another major update where a lot of things are going to be improved. We're going to add a few extra things to it." And they really need to do that, and they need to show that they are dedicated to this title other than just like throwing it out. It's like, hey, we're on to the next project. We'll fix maybe a few major bugs, but, you know, you're kind of on your own. But that's just not the way it works because I haven't bought the damn thing yet, and I'm waiting for it. In fact, I'm still waiting to play Witcher 3.
Don't worry, you'll enjoy the bugs in Witcher 3.
Oh, thanks.
I did read a rumor.
No, I can't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Josh, I can't agree more with you. Like, I didn't go out and buy it because I knew damn well this was pushed at the very end because artificial deadline. We need to get it out for the Christmas season so that people can play it on the brand new hardware they're not going to be able to have. Or, you know, on old hardware. It was obvious this was coming. It's obvious to anyone who's been a long-term gamer and sort of follows the behind the scenes of the industry that, yeah, it was going to be a problem. But there are plenty of people that love it. And the thing that I would pull out was Skyrim. Skyrim is still buggy as hell, even unmodded. You step on the wrong rock and you end up in orbit. You try and keep one of those NPCs alive as it pathfinds itself into the trap to avoid the other trap that
into oblivion, right? That's
right?
The wrong game.
Yeah, well, and beyond. So, I mean, yeah, bugs in games are not a huge problem. But you've got to understand walking into it that this was an insane project. CD Projekt Red tends to love to do this. They make a huge frickin' world, and they let you wander around in it and do whatever the heck you want. And if you wander into a place you shouldn't be, well, you're going to die horrible, horrible times over and over and over again. And in a way, and I, again, haven't played it yet, but just reading the reviews and ignoring the ones that just immediately start screaming and yelling about how it's the floating car ruined their entire life. this reminds me of like games like Boiling Point or Stalker or some of the other ones that just when they came out, there was like a layer of 18 different systems on top of each other, and if one little bit broke, they just went and fell in very strange and interesting ways, but eventually got better as they sort of fixed stuff. Because, I mean, I don't know if you remember, they released the original Stalker source code, which had vehicles in it. It had floating aliens in it. It had teleportation skills. It was utter insanity. And at some point they realized that there's no way in hell that this is ever going to be ready to release without, years and years of work. So they did the same thing. Well, we'll rip a bunch of the shit out, but we'll leave in weapon durability because, people are used to that. And various other systems in it, or every single bonus you pick up is going to have a negative. And people hated that. But it was what they were trying to build. So I think given time, it's going to become fun, and, I'm with you, Josh. I really, really hope that CD Projekt Red sticks with this for a while, even to the point of an enhanced edition, which they've got a history of doing. And it's going to be a lot more interesting once it ages.
They could, there's plenty of stuff they could do. I'm sure it'll be this.
That's true.
The funny thing to me is that
maybe they can implement bump mapping, EMBM.
Well, they certainly.
Brett, you were going to talk about the refund situation. I know that I read that. Good luck getting it from Sony, right?
If they bought direct, then they're stonewalling them. They're saying talk to the hand on that situation. Those people are stuck. Basically, the word out of the company, especially during the last call, was where they had I'm not sure whether it was an earnings call or whether it was just a regular an off topic meeting. They're talking about this is going to be so good when these people who are on 4th gen upgrade to essentially the next gen console. And I think the response was, you can't buy the next gen console. What are you people talking about? Yes, that sounds nice. Write it down. It looks great in writing. It's just not realistic right now. Even if these people wanted to, they couldn't upgrade. And you promised them an experience that they can't get. In fact, you delayed the game saying that 4th gen people or the people on last gen console we're going to get a reasonable experience. They don't have it. They're pissed off.
You don't think 17 to 23
Jaguar
frames per
course
second
forever
is
Jaguar? You're right about that.
Jaguar.
I'm going to go plug in my Atari Jaguar.
No. Okay.
No.
Right.
I mean, the cell architecture could have handled this.
That Jaguar.
No, Jeremy. We're going to go on. I'm going to travel up to Vancouver and beat the living crap out of you.
I deserve it for that.
Cell architect. Yeah. No, your SPUs are not up to the task.
Damn it!
I have started playing the game. I will say that.
I got to say, okay, going back in time, if I'm going to interrupt you.
Okay.
So there was this individual, and this was many, many years ago. This is when, was it the PS2 or PS3?
Depends where you're going.
It was the PS3. Because that had the NVIDIA graphics in there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So a guy wrote me, and he's like, do you think NVIDIA will want to go back to the PC when they've tasted from the fire hose that is the cell architecture with the SPUs? And it's like, I think you're a little too far up Sony's to be asking this question, because it's just, these are just accelerators in there that do certain things. And not only that, but the way the cell architecture was architected, you could only use like 2 SPUs at the time without being memory constrained. But anyway, yeah, that's just I'm sorry, I went off on.
They should have paired it with HBM.
Topic. Yeah, they well, there was a lot of problems with cell processor with SPUs, and it was not good.
Yes, there's a reason they didn't stick with it.
Without, yeah. So anyway, there are people who are very enthusiastic about hardware that Sony releases. But yeah, Jaguar cores, they don't seem to be up to the...
Right.
I mean, there's, 8 of them?
It's the same number of cores in both, right? In the PS4 and the Xbox One, but GPUs are different. Well, memory is different.
Well, it's okay, but we've got hyperthreading on the Zen cores in the next generation. So...
if it works with the game. That's the other thing. We didn't.
I think
have on the
they
list
do
SMT
something
on the
weird where
NV
sometimes
processor.
it's SMT and sometimes it ain't.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
But it depends on the workload and anyway.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah,
all you
that's-
need is either hardware you can't buy to play it on PC, or a next gen console you can't buy to have a better console experience.
That was my point.
You are correct, sir.
So, but here's the thing. My point was, before I was so rudely interrupted by Josh,
Sorry.
they had already made their money back on pre-sales. This is like they were so proud of this.
Yeah.
Like development
made
costs were paid.
Was it the biggest or just one of the biggest?
I don't know. It seems like the biggest.
Yeah, I think
No,
it was
Star
the-
Citizen, I think, is still the biggest.
That's not even really a pre-order anymore.
No, that's
is it?
not
That
even-
is the game. What you're playing is the game. It's all it's
No.
ever going to be.
Josh, was this the biggest one, or was it just like the second?
No, I mean
biggest
the
one?
pre-sales. It was $500 million worth of games
Yeah.
sold. I mean, Star Citizen. I think when they first opened up beta, I mean, it was insane. It was like $130 million that they got for that, but it was not this. I mean, now Star Citizen has now made like $1 billion.
Something like that.
Yeah, and so when you've
some would
taken
say it's still not a
7
game.
years of
By
it's
the way,
7 years of development that Star Citizen has had, and you've still got a somewhat playable game that they reset all the time, and sometimes you lose ships and sometimes you don't. But
is it a game?
yeah, but no, CD Projekt Red getting $500 million from pre-sales.
Yeah,
well,
they're
I mean,
doing okay.
give or take, because they've got other partners and publishers and stuff that they got to pay to. But $500 million, 500 and some odd million. That's insane. That's an insane amount of money. I mean, they're a developer. They're 150, 200 people. $500 million. I don't know.
That is true.
Maybe
Hey-
more. Maybe 500, but still.
Let's pause. Let's pause here. Pump the brakes, Josh. Let's pause here to hear from our first sponsor tonight, LinkedIn Talent Solutions.
Some things about the holiday season never change, even when everything around us is. So when your small business needs to ramp up for the new year, LinkedIn Jobs is ready to help. Because LinkedIn Jobs matches your open roles with qualified candidates, which means you can find the right person for your business fast. The LinkedIn Jobs platform makes it so easy for job seekers to search broadly on general expertise or zero right in onto their exact specialties. So you'll have the tools to craft an appeal for your precise requirements. LinkedIn is an active community of professionals with more than 722 million members worldwide. Getting started is easier than ever with new features to help you find qualified candidates quickly. Post a job with targeted screening questions, and they'll quickly get your role in front of more qualified candidates. Manage job posts and contact candidates from a single view on the familiar LinkedIn.com, as functions are streamlined into one simple screen. And now you can do this all from your mobile device, no matter where the day takes you. That's how LinkedIn Jobs can help you hire the right person faster. Visit linkedin.com/PCPer to get $50 off your first job post. That's linkedin.com/PCPer to get $50 off your first job post. Terms and conditions may apply.
I have no idea what's going on with this next story, but it's going to be all you, Jeremy. We're going to talk about...
Hey, can you wait a second? Can I get a beer? Because
Yes,
let me
go.
tell you,
Because
Get
you
a
don't have
beer.
the mini fridge anymore.
I don't have the mini
Josh,
fridge. This is
Gosh, I have to say, I just actually
2020, dude. 22.
I sent someone out for
2020.
one. I
You
sent
what?
someone out for one. I sent
Like out of the
someone out for one.
house?
No, around the corner and back to the
Texted
kitchen.
the wife?
Oh,
Gosh,
okay.
you need
beer.
someone you can text. Do you have someone you can text?
Oh, I can, but they will not deliver me a beer.
Man, that's cold.
That's hard. That's rude.
Makes me cry at night
okay.
often.
All right, you take
All right,
you take
well,
care.
Josh is going to go. We're going to take a brief intermission here. Well, Josh,
Fetch us the
watch-
beer. Well, honestly, I thought we were still on the
Josh.
edit point.
Josh's room. Ooh, what's going on down here?
Oh, we don't see that very often.
Let's see. There's
Zoom and enhance.
So yeah, there's a bunch of like security, encryption, stupidity coming up here.
You caught us, Josh.
Why would you do
You
that?
caught us. We were examining the room. Speaking of randomness, Jeremy,
Nice.
certifiably random, a new quantum
Process.
road to cheap encryption. by Jeremy
So,
Hellstrom.
you can't certify that a number is random, but you can certify that a process will create a random number.
Now,
And
maybe people don't
so
understand the reason or the importance of true randomness.
If they're
hoping
watching
you'd
this
interject.
podcast, I think they do.
Okay, yep, and this is what this is. It's random. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Sorry to interrupt.
you will read about people, like, because the thing is, if you can predict someone, and humans are predictable. We eschew certain letters or number combinations for a variety of reasons, which are relatively predictable in large enough quantities. Processes and algorithms, same damn thing. They will sooner or later eventually start to form patterns. It seems weird, but a lot of higher math is. This is why you run into all sorts of people talking about changing random mouse movements to generate an encryption code, to use random digits from an atomic clock with, several thousand digits of accuracy to try and create something that's truly random. For the most part, it's good enough for government work, but it ain't really truly random. So with a lot of quantum processing, there is a way, because a lot of the quantum events are non-deterministic. That's sort of, inherent of being able to be talked about as that, as opposed to, just using it as a buzzword. And the problem with this is that you might have noticed, but there's only a couple of systems out there with a few entangled qubits, and they don't tend to be cheap to set up. So if you're really trying to set up some encryption, it's kind of freaking hard to be able to do on the fly. So some researchers have come up with not only a way to produce properly random strings of numbers, but to do it in a way that is actually not stupidly expensive and relatively available for everyone. It was headed out of the University of Oxford, and what they did was they took a photon generator, a light source, and sent it to a beam splitter, which is then connected to a pair of detectors. Now, one of the detectors is essentially disconnected. It's always going to be a 0. It's never going to detect a photon. The other one, there's a 50-50 chance that the photon sent to it will be reflected or absorbed and sent through to the detector. And so what they do is they've got a sensor to say, how many photons were shot at it, because only one of them is going to get picked out of the, however many are sent. So they try and figure out, within a certain threshold, you send too few photons, its chances are going to be negative. You send too many, chances are it's going to be positive. But within a certain threshold, there's no way of frickin' knowing if that photon is going to go through or not. And so they use that to generate the string of digits. And because, we're talking the speed of light, more or less, minus the time it takes to write, they're producing 8.05 gigabits per second. And of course, you can then even randomly pick strings between that. So what they've figured out is, with stuff that is more or less readily available for anyone, well, except for the room where you measure them in, you can create what is mathematically provable at this point. It could be that someone proves that there is actually a pattern later on, but don't expect it tomorrow. An actual reasonable way to create truly random strings of digits for encryption purposes without having to go to the insane lengths that the original talking about quantum encryption was. So it's kind of nifty. Of course, the best part about it is you don't need millions of dollars worth of equipment to be able to try and pull this off.
Which is always a plus. A lot of that, let's say 99% of it was over my head. Maybe Brett has some thoughts.
Well, only in that it's tangentially related to the next topic of security. And
Josh, turn off your audio.
Yeah, I'm sure Josh wants to chime in on this, in that how the SolarWinds hack affected him personally and his professional
It touched
business.
me. It touched me in a bad place.
It touched you in a bad way. Josh is going to have to seek counseling. SolarWinds, in
Show
case
me
people don't understand.
on your ports map where SolarWinds touched me.
Where on the network
place.
switch? Where on the network switch did SolarWinds touch you?
Oh,
In this port right here, it hurt.
yeah.
That was too real. Brett speaks from a place of pain.
You know what? I've been an SA for a really long time, and that's a sysadmin. In case people weren't understanding. Anyway, SolarWinds is a company that put it out there that they could handle your network administration, and it was a very convenient back end measure for touching literally all of your infrastructure, how your switches were performing, how your network was performing, how your services were performing, outbound, inbound, where your pain points were in normal operations, what was down, things were being monitored. But in order to accomplish that, this system needed to have a very high level of access. So in a roundabout fashion, what the hackers did in order to compromise this was to go after what
Read a
some
plain
might say
text password.
No, well, that's possible, but I'm going to jump to the punchline. Where they ended up being able to compromise the system was in the distribution area, and they were able to compromise the source space and get it into the distribution where people, companies or corporations, U.S. governments were downloading updates. They were able to poison that tree and get a hack in that way, so that the bad actors, we think it might be Russia, we don't know, it looks like it might have been, could get into the systems with a backdoor, and it actually that disguised some of their traffic as looking like the system was called Orion, so that it was actually looking like it was Orion's traffic. And as Sebastian just highlighted there, roughly potentially 18,000 customers were.
Do you trust this update?
Oh gosh, yes. And amongst them were things like the U.S. Treasury, the Department of Defense, the White House. It is just so nasty. This rivals and exceeds, I think, the hack that we trace back to China. That was the hack that exposed everybody who was a contractor that had a security clearance back with the not Homeland Security, but one of the I can't remember the department name that right now, but that got hacked and everybody's information was leaked. I was actually affected because I have a TSSA, and I got forever. I have monitoring on my personal identity because of the Chinese hack. So it affects people, personally as well. And that is a problem that Josh can probably add some detail to how it affected him personally and his company. So yeah, take it away.
Wrong camera.
What? I have something to say about it?
I guess. I mean, you were talking about it earlier about it came to your front porch.
Were you affected by this,
luckily, okay. So we were panicking for a while. Luckily, and I don't want to give any information on the internet about what we're actually doing. We had a product from SolarWinds that was not apparently affected by this. They don't do a lot of the back administration of switches, routers, whatever. And so it's more of a monitoring situation for us. And so luckily, I mean, we're still updating and watching out for things and doing whatnot. But yeah, when this came across the wire, it was like, oh, because the company I work for is not small anymore. I mean, it's they do some pretty big things. And so, we have had people snooping around our network, and we're pretty proactive. I mean, there's a lot of bad actors out there. There's a lot of people with a lot more money than we have that, it's their job to snoop into stuff. And so when we get something like this, it's like all hands on deck. We got to make sure that we're covered. I mean, we're small fries as compared to others, but we're still significant for an individual. So yeah, this SolarWinds thing was scary, very scary. And I mean, when you're dealing with 11, 12 remote offices and you have a product that's pitched to you It's like, hey, you can control all this stuff easily from a central area. You can monitor it. You can do all of this stuff. You just need to give us all your passwords.
Yeah, or install
do
these
this.
agents on all these
and,
things
and,
that
and here, and
remote
that
control
we need
them
this
and report
API in
back.
there. And
Yes.
it gets, I mean, you just have to balance out, how much are we paying for this? How much easier it's going to be for our life, and how much we're willing to risk, because risk is becoming
exactly
a huge factor. I mean, the what is that? What virus?
WannaCry.
I can't remember.
WannaCry.
And also all of the
encrypt everything, demand cryptocurrency.
Exactly. And I mean, it is a massive headache for any SA. I mean, it's because
do you disable all multi-threading and branch prediction?
Oh,
to be safe, or do you just destroy performance?
I mean, the cache hammer or row hammer type.
Row hammer.
Yeah.
Spectre.
Hey, but it would also help to actually secure your passwords and use more sophisticated passwords.
Oh yeah, Jeremy was talking about this. This is actually a lot easier to do than you wish it was. Yeah, and what I mean by that is when you Git and GitHub themselves are great source code control managers. And it is stupid easy to go like, oh, let me just check my stuff in. And if you're not careful, you will inadvertently end up checking in potentially configuration files that have buried passwords in them. And apparently they may have done this. Now, Jeremy, you wanted to say something about this a minute ago.
I think I managed to get it in there, which is that, literally their update server's password, which posted in clean text, was SolarWinds123, all lowercase. Easy for reps to remember, because we all know that reps are not the brightest breed of human on the planet.
I love how initially the repo had been open for 2 to 3 weeks was the report, but then it was learned it had been that way since June of 2018. So, I mean, if your FTP server has a plain text password that's actually visible.
Yeah. I've adopted several projects for people over the years, and I've had to point out to them, hey, you've checked in your database credentials and or your access credentials, and you might want to pull that back out of GitHub. That seems like a mistake. It happens. And it's easy to do.
Do we want to beat the dead horse that is other media outlets jumping all over the hardware unboxed saga?
I think the last thing that came out of this was that because they came out swinging so hard on, you don't see the game world in the same way that we do, that people who do review an NVIDIA card with a DLSS game or an RTX enabled game who do have positive things to say are now suspect, because the review is now potentially tainted in that, oh, hey, is this reviewer just bending to the will of NVIDIA because they don't want to lose their access or their support? And this was, I think someone had pointed out, maybe it was Gamers Nexus who said it, something along the lines of, hey, nice self-own, NVIDIA, on this one, that you put it out there in such a way that it now, positive press, looks suspicious.
Right, because there's this assumption made then, if you take this as, oh, this is how you treat everybody. The reason this was surprising to me was that this is not typical at all. And I kind of wonder if maybe there's more behind this, but who knows? But of course it's all been reversed now. We just haven't talked about it yet on the show. But
yeah, Brian sent more than one message to the Hardware Unboxed guys saying, we're sorry.
It's
we're
a
really
learning
sorry.
experience for all of us.
And we all have really shitty days.
I think today actually is my anniversary, my 2-year anniversary since I took over as editor-in-chief here. It was mid-December 2018 when I took it over from Ken, because Ken was leaving for Intel. Followed Ryan over there along with Alan.
Poor.
And in 2 years, I have never had one of these conversations. I've never had one of these emails. And I thought, well, is this because I'm just irrelevant? Is it because PC Perspective is not looked on as, being a strong enough voice that we need to try to lecture them on content? I don't think so. Because we're given access to all the same stuff. We're all in the same calls. You're absolutely strongly encouraged to benchmark ray traced games and use ray tracing benchmarks to test the 20 and 30 series cards.
And I don't blame them for that.
That's because that's what their push is with those products. Yeah. There's a reason the 20 series was launched. It didn't have that much better performance than the 10 series, if any. Oh. It was all about ray tracing. And
the initial DLSS.
Right. And if you weren't testing that, then they're like, why are we, I can see it both ways. And this is coming from somebody who's not an NVIDIA apologist. This is somebody who was in management for a decade. Sometimes you take stuff down. I was in middle management, which is the worst kind because you have to take stuff from up top. And then I had to get my managers together and tell them, this is what we're going to do. And I didn't always agree with it. But because my job was to get them on board, I had to try to play devil's advocate and say, well, I can see why they're doing this because this, and this. Or you have to try to find some kind of motivation. And if it was really bad, I would just say, look, this sucks, but we have to do it. But I can see where if this is just a business and media is just an extension of PR and they only want to sample people who are going to give them good PR, then yeah, that makes a strong case for journalism no longer being reliant on PR to get samples, because that's who you deal with to get samples.
And that's why it's concerning to people like us who rely on this relationship and the freedom to be able to say what we need to say.
I'm not trying to pull any kind of rank here, but I started this in 1997, and I've developed relationships through multiple decades now. It's 23 years that I've actually been doing writing. And I can kind of see where NVIDIA was coming from. I'm not trying to apologize for them. But yeah, if you've got a product that you've got, you integrate all these tensor cores, you integrate all these standalone RTX units, you've got software that actually supports this, but you're sending cards off to somebody who refuses to test that for one reason or the other and kind of downplays it. It's like, it's not needed for this. Battlefield, this is not that great, blah, 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 blah. I can understand them saying, you know what, you're not really with the program. You're not pushing what we're trying to do. I mean, I for whether right or wrong, and I'm not saying what BDR did was right, but I can understand where they're coming from. I mean, they're sending thousands and thousands of dollars worth of hardware to a guy, and they're ignoring a part of it. It's like, you're Ford, and we're going to car analogies. Classic for tech press. But anyway, you send a brand new Mustang to them, and you're like, we've upgraded the suspension. We've done, the magneto ride stuff that automatically, adjusts how much dampening you get depending on conditions. And the guy only tests it doing a quarter mile against the Dodge SRT Charger, and it loses. And they don't take it on the track at Willow Springs. They just do straight line tests. And that's that. I mean, if you're Ford, you're like, we've put all this technology on here that has taken it from a solid rear axle Mustang that handles okay around corners, but not real great. But we've redone it. We've done independent suspension. We've actually gotten this up to a level that is right up there with some of the low-end supercars from Europe, but you're only testing it in a straight line against something that is aimed right at straight line speed. And that's kind of what marketing is looking at, and it's not fair. It's not exactly. I mean, it's ethical, but it's not, because you have to kind of respect the vision of the people who are writing this stuff. But at the same time, if they're ignoring some of the advancements you're doing, it's like, when do I cut bait on these guys? I mean, we're getting bad reviews. They're ignoring things that we have integrated in here that are big positives. But, you know, it's kind of the place for it, because we also rely on the software ecosystem, and that takes time to catch up as well. And so you've got a couple of seeded software pieces that show up the advantages here, and you can actually see the advantages, but it's not the entire world. It's not every single piece of software. So it's a balance in between your editorial and saying, hey, you know what? I see what they're doing. I see the advantages here. I see what they're trying to push, but we also need to take a look at here. And it's almost like these guys have like, okay, we're only going to focus here. And I mean, there's validity there, because those are the games that people play. But at the same time, there's the future. And not everybody goes road courses. Some people still like the quarter mile, and that's all they like. Where's the balance? I don't know.
It's because the balance comes in when the consumer is looking at different reviewers. That's where the balance comes in that people as reviewers are going to perhaps focus in on their specialty. And I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that, hey, one person wants to, the car analogy, their specialty is perhaps really dialing in and zeroing in on particular performance aspects of the car. And the consumer is going to know, maybe not, that this reviewer zeroes in on that bit of part of the technology space. And that it's up to the consumer to go sample different reviewers. And that happens. I mean, we're part of that, food chain of being sampled, as we're just a voice that we hope people take into consideration when they're looking at different technology for them to adopt and purchase. And maybe it's the final stop for them. Maybe it's the only voice that they hear. I guess that's the concern if you're only hearing one side of the story. But the hope is that the consumer is sampling several different reviewers' perspectives, and that they're making an informed decision. Maybe that's giving people too much credit. I don't know. But I guess that's maybe.
I think the biggest problem
we've probably killed this one, though, haven't we?
We have.
Oh,
it's
we
already
have.
been
And
killed.
I haven't even gotten to my point yet.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
All right.
I was just going to quickly say that there is one way in which we're crippled for being able to benchmark ray tracing. When you think back to when this was originally released, one of the hugest things they showed was the effect this has on movie studios, the effect this has on graphic designers, the effect this has on people whose profession depends on being able to just completely and utterly change the entire lighting in a scene in the snap of a finger, as opposed to waiting 20 minutes to an hour for it to re-render. We're not set up to benchmark that sort of thing. Yes, if we had, some of the higher end Adobe stuff, if we had some of the cinematic software that benefits from it on the business side, there is no question whatsoever that ray tracing is abso-frickin-lutely amazing. Instead, what we've got is a stable of 10, 12 games that have ray tracing to some extent, from Battlefield 5 to Cyberpunk. So there's only so much we can talk about as well. And, frankly, from the gaming perspective, yeah, as I was saying earlier, it's spiffy, but it's not as life-changing as it would be the same as we run into trying to, I'd love to benchmark in an Epic processor. I have no frickin' idea how I'd do it. I don't have, the server depth, the depth of queue on a server to be able to handle that sort of thing. So
sure, you don't know how to do, benchmark SQL databases that are, millions of rows and columns.
It's strange. I just don't have that lying around.
Okay. I'm sorry. SQL databases are not rows and columns, but anyway.
Yeah, well, he's not saying death threats to the developers either, so that's a good point.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do that. Don't do that.
I will say
Anybody's listening.
It has gotten a
Don't
lot
say
easier to benchmark because there are more standalone tools. There's the DXR test to add to Port Royal, which already existed in 3D Mark, but that's platform agnostic. You had the platform agnostic test called Neon Noir that was like a CryEngine test, which was, again, it could run on AMD or NVIDIA. RTX specific tests, standalone tests such as Bright Memory Infinite and Boundary now exist. They're free to download. You can test your graphics cards with those. And then, of course, the games. And not every game has its own built-in benchmark that'll test ray tracing. I know Metro Exodus does. That's a modest example of ray tracing. But you can test DLSS. Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Some of these things have tools that make it easier to do than others. With CyberPunk, there's no way to do it in an automated fashion, which is something I've been kind of like, okay, what do they recommend? Okay, like driving in a car. That makes sense because you can drive down the same road back and forth and do a repeatable benchmark. But I struggle with stuff like that. Like, I need something that's repeatable, where I'm not just taking data where I had 54 frames per second, 72, and 48, and then average those three out. Well, what about the next three runs? What about the next three runs after that?
You can't discount the repeatability of it, and it's not really comparable. And I think it's fair for you not to include those sort of things because they have to be really repeatable, and you can't.
Yeah. Anyway,
I think we're killing the audience.
We are.
We're having fun.
The problem.
Good talk.
The biggest problem really is that PR is who samples. If we were talking directly to the engineers and they were all excited about a new feature and they talked to you about it and they got you excited about it, there's something about talking to the people who make it happen because their enthusiasm can rub off on you and you want to experience this too, versus sitting on a call with somebody from PR and they're showing you slides and you're like, okay, this is just PR though. Like, I'm just trying to help you sell cards. Well, yes.
These are some detailed technical questions you were asking, which we might be able to set up a one-on-one interview for you later on this week, but we're not qualified to answer those.
I would say NVIDIA is better at stuff like that than others.
True.
But
anyway, fair.
Regardless.
You do open the door to the gray area of are you just an extension for marketing? Are you an independent reviewer? And that's a whole other thing.
Anyway, speaking of independence, I don't know why.
No, speaking of dependence, I think.
You stop with that because I know my name is coming up next.
Yeah, because if you think about it, being dependent on having one of 20, 25 microcenters in the entire country. And by the way, there are 50 states, which means, and I think at least one state doesn't one state have 2 microcenters?
Like
I'm
Texas?
not sure about that. Yeah. Anyway,
California has
for some reason we're talking about microcenter, but this is an article
Wyoming
about
has 0.
Michigan
So does
has
Canada.
one, but it's 2.5 hours away. Some really modest looking power supply. Why are we talking about this?
Because, Jeremy,
That was $40, and it's modular.
Jeremy, why don't you explain?
No, it's not modular at all.
That's not modular.
That's
Oh wait,
how
no,
the
it's not. I
wires
thought these were
come out.
modular cables, but no, those are just the cables.
They're not.
Okay, it's
They're
attached.
partially
And I think
sleeved.
This illustrates an important point that I want to get out in front of, that not everything you buy at a microcenter is a quality component. Granted. Okay, Jeremy, go ahead.
What does the FPS review have to say about this?
Oh God, it's
That it could
so
start
much
a
fun to
Harley.
read.
Is it? Well, let's read. Where do you like ripple and noise?
I think page 7, I think, is where they really bring the hammer.
Oh, but
Really?
ripple and noise is like, so they normally do 4 tests. You'll notice there were only 2 on that page. And one of them is labeled 50% load. Yes, you really want to see high bars on the transient noise voltage.
No, this does not look good at all.
Let me just fill in the backstory as to why this is so damn funny. It's because obviously the microcenter aspect of this is a house brand, I think.
Oh,
for
okay.
Microcenter.
Yes, for
All right.
micro.
What is the brand? I don't even.
And
Solid gear?
compared to Roseville.
and it sucks the
Oh,
whirlwind,
Roseville looks so
apparently.
much better than this.
He's right.
Solid
He's right.
gear. Somebody likes.
brand
This is
is
like
solid.
1998 power supply technology.
No,
Yeah.
Josh, I think you're giving it too much credit.
I like how
I think
they under their load testing category they refer to it as a dumpster fire. that is
and
the
it
Solid
sounds
Gear
like it.
Neutron 550.
I mean, that is exaggerating. There was only a bit of smoke. There was no fire
Okay.
after 50% load.
All right. I think the best thing they said about it was the paint was applied evenly.
Yes.
Oh, this is mean. Oh, wow.
It's not good.
That seems harsh.
All right.
Okay.
I read it
Not
and I
everything
just
you buy at a
started
Micro
laughing.
Center is going to be great. But, and this is a true story, and you guys are going to like roll your eyes so hard, I'm going to be able to hear it. When I was there this weekend,
Oh, brother.
exactly. When I was there this weekend, helping to build a friend's PC, and I bought one of the 5600Xs they had in stock. I just bought it. They had it because they had it, and
It's a good
built
CPU.
help. Yeah, it's good. It's if you can get it. Maybe you should go to your Micro Center and pick one up. And bought that, and I had a great experience at the Micro Center. Bought a very inexpensive PC. Probably spent about $700-800 on a fully fleshed out PC that's being built right now. The components went to somebody's house, and they're building it right now. Great experience at Micro Center. Certain things are terrible. Bought a Red Dragon power supply, which I think is also a house brand, but doesn't seem to suck. Seems to work okay. And yeah, don't buy the one that FSP, looked at. But other stuff is fine, and sometimes the deals are great. Like let's see, regular price in the 5600, no markup, it's $289, $299, something like that. I highly recommend you visit your local Micro Center.
Yeah, if anything,
Awesome.
their
You
didn't have
CPUs are
to buy
cheaper
another-
than retail.
Yes,
Sorry.
You didn't
for
have to buy a
instance-
combo with the 5600X. You didn't have
Straight
to
up
get
just
2
bought it.
pieces
Ooh.
of memory that you will never install on anything.
Nope. Bought a B550
Okay.
MSI motherboard for $109. Interestingly, comparison metric of a 9900K is still $299 at Micro Center. Just as throwing it out there as a comparison, not that you should buy or not buy one.
Yes. Intel.
And now
Nitro.
for our next sponsor, Micro Center.
Actually, no, but we are going to pause here for sponsor number 2 on the podcast this week. Brett,
Thank
who
you,
is
Remote
this?
HQ. Remote HQ. It's like being in the same room. Right now, many employees and coworkers have to work from home or remotely. Remote HQ can get everyone working together again easily. Remote HQ is a high-security, enterprise-grade, collaborative workspace that empowers modern remote teams to work together in ways that are not possible with other tools. Remote HQ enables teams to work in co-op as if they were together in the same room. The system allows you to build up your own workspaces, customized to each meeting or group with apps and layouts as you see fit. Members can work on documents or websites in real time, sharing control and making changes on screen simultaneously. It's incredibly flexible for every meeting's unique needs and very engaging for the participants. In fact, at the end of a session, you can leave everything in place, save it, and pick up right where you left off when everyone attends the next session. Smart and a real time saver. There are controls, of course, for presenting, passing control of an app or layout section, even muting or blocking out users, which is better than real life sometimes. Create your own virtual office with Remote HQ with their no software download browser-based solution. 5 minutes to get up and running by creating your workspace and inviting your team via email links. I would encourage you to try it. I introduced Remote HQ to one of my clients who is now adopting it as part of their remote learning system. Head over to remotehq.co/PCPer, that's .co/PCPer, for a free trial. When you're ready to launch your rooms, use offer code PCPer for 3 months free. That's remotehq.co/PCPer.
We're back. Thank you.
Hey,
And XPG has joined the PCIe 4 crowd. This is solid state drives here. The 1 terabyte Gamix S50 Lite, but look at this, Silicon Motion SM2267. So not only is this PCIe 4, it's that new Silicon Motion controller, and this is not a Phison drive. What can you tell us about this?
And it's $140.
Jeremy? Really?
For 1 terabyte, huh?
Interesting.
It's
Now-
not extremely fast.
No.
But it's got TLC and a RAM cache. Why isn't it
Yeah, it's got
faster than
cache.
this? It's got cache.
what's with the cache? Yes, tell us about the cache.
Well, it's DDR4, I believe from SK Hynix, but they didn't actually specify how much.
Oh,
So obviously they've done a little bit of cost cutting on it because it's no brand new Western Digital drive, but then again, that one's almost $100 more, so don't bitch. Seriously, it's a stupidly good deal for what you're never gonna, and honestly, you're not gonna notice the difference. I mean, the sequential reads of 3,500 versus 7,000 are going to mean very little to you unless you're Sebastian dealing with his podcast after the fact. In which case, it's actually probably worth it.
what do you got there, Josh?
What do you got there? Is that a Severant?
I don't know.
Which one is that?
Sabrent,
Is that the black on gold or the gold on black?
Rocket 4 Plus with the 7 gigabytes per second reads.
Oh my!
5 point
nice.
whatever gigabyte. No, not.
I've only got
any
the
other
slightly older version.
Wait a minute, you've got the
Yeah.
black on gold, and you've got the gold on black. It's so different.
Ooh, that's hot.
Why am I being left out of this? Are you guys actually buying this stuff, or you got like some?
I
Yeah.
bought this stuff, but anyway,
okay.
it looks like these are a good deal for. They're faster than the PCIe 3.0
Yep.
and NVMe cards for the most part. So you're paying a small premium over them, but you're paying less than the E16 base Phison, which is 5 gigabytes per second reads and about a 4 gigabytes per second writes until you exhaust the SLC. So yeah, this is a nice balance in between. We'd have to go into some further SSD type testing, but at from 10,000 feet, it's priced appropriately for the performance you get versus even that first generation Phison. I mean, they're significantly slower than the second generation Phison and the first generation of the WD 850 drives. What is the SN 850? Is that right?
Yeah, the WD Black SN850
Yeah.
is the new one.
Yeah.
The new Gen
And,
4.
Intel announced Gen 4 stuff, didn't they? Today.
Did they? Well, yeah, it's all data center, but
Optane
because they're kind of out of
4.
the consumer game.
Yeah, Optane stuff, which is
Yeah, there's a brand new Optane now, too.
silly
that you can't buy.
It's going to be in 2021, but
Yeah.
silly fast. I wonder if Alan worked on that.
Yeah, I wonder. And speaking of
Anyway.
things that speaking of things Alan did not work on, another
one of them.
subpar SSD review. We've moved on to the reviews portion of our show. And we're going to talk about an SSD review that I put up. Why is it not on my screen? Here we go. Switching over. The WD Blue SN550. Now, this is a considerably lower performer than the WD SN750 or 850. This is from the WD Blue line, and if you have shopped around for inexpensive SSDs, you'd have seen some of the Blues are actually SATA drives, and then there was an SN500 that was a rather low performer that was a PCIe NVMe drive, and this replaces it, the SN550. And look at the card here. There are only 2 chips here.
They've left some space.
There's some space between the two. You have NAND and you have controller up here. I'll give you a better look.
They left room for the sticker.
There's a sticker in between that's not covering any devices here. Normally the sticker is over like
Isn't it amazing
various chips.
how dense NAND has become that this is
Yes.
1 terabyte, 2
Yeah, it's a terabyte.
NAND
One
chips. One on the front,
chip.
one on the back, right?
One controller
Well, the
chip, one
two
storage chip.
terabyte might have one on the back. There's nothing on the back of this card.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
It's one.
Yeah.
Wow.
This one's not a mullet.
dense
It's
chip.
literally one. It's one terabyte 96 layer NAND package.
Did it come with an aluminum wrapper that you
No.
unwrapped and then popped into your mouth?
At least you can see by the connection key that it is NVMe.
Yes. It's NVMe.
Oh, yeah.
You can see this controller here. It's actually a SanDisk branded controller, but of course it's Western Digital
Oh.
and SanDisk. They own that brand. And then here's the NAND, which is I think
It's so
this is
far
the-
away.
Yeah.
Lonely.
What would
Yeah,
they
you
have
think
done
the
with, like,
performance
if
improvement
they
they
had
could have had if
just
they moved
put it
it closer.
closer? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
The two of you, literally.
I know.
What kind of performance
a
enhancement
rumble.
would there be if Jeremy and Josh were in the same room during the
You just
recording of
heard
our
it.
show?
You just heard it.
That's
That's what
would
it would
be
be.
a lot of liquor drinking.
Yep.
More than now.
You would raid my pappies, and it would be grim.
Okay, so
That's okay. I'd have some scotch for you.
All right.
Speaking of, can we please look at Jeremy's shirt here? I've noticed. Doesn't look at that malt whiskey
Malt
Instead of
whiskey.
in the style of
know what?
Walt Disney. Just imagine, audio
didn't.
listeners, the Walt Disney logo with the signature underneath in the Magic Kingdom. Instead, a series of liquor bottles and then malt whiskey in the same font. It's very clever.
Nice.
I appreciated that. Moving quickly through this review of sorts, if you could call it
How did
that.
it perform, though?
It performed surprisingly well. Serve the Home reviewed this over the summer, and I read that review, and they talked about this device having some internal SRAM in the controller. That seems to have been the key, because we've seen this 96-layer NAND before, and for some reason, this DRAM-less drive, this is a DRAM-less drive. There is no RAM. There was just the controller and the NAND. Surprisingly good performance. We're talking like just straight line. We're talking 2400. Actually exceeded that slightly. It was rated at 2400 megabytes per second and 1950 on writes. And I got 2448 and 1970. But that's...
So you're saying this is faster than the Intel 660p?
Oh, yeah. And I don't think I have a 660p. I found an old Intel 760p, a 500 gigabyte. And I could not believe how slow it was. I'd forgotten that thing was... It was faster than SATA, but not by a whole heck of a lot. Because we're talking 800...
But it was pretty consistent.
It is very consistent. And actually very good at lower Q depths, not surprisingly. But we're talking like in straight line at various Q depths here. We'll just do Q depth 4. 817 megabytes per second for that Intel 760. An inexpensive Lexar NM600, which is a DRAM-less drive, 2082.
Ouch.
This drive... 2434 at QD4, and then the Kingston KC2000 that I tested it against, also 1 terabyte, was 3250 megabytes per second at both QDEP 4 and 8. But this is one of those things where if you actually start looking at the random performance, you'll see the difference. Like this drive, the new SN550, had, in my brief testing, both the highest QDepth 8 performance and the lowest QDepth 1 performance. So if it was only allowed to use one channel, if you weren't saturating the controller and using multiple channels like you can at higher QDepths, it was a lower performing drive. And it did very well when it was able to work at higher QDepths. As every drive will, they always have higher performance at higher QDepths, but low Q-depth performance is kind of, it's a way to tell how well it's going to handle certain types of workloads. You're typically only working in lower Q-depth for certain, types of jobs. And we're not doing any kind of data center testing or anything here, but like Intel typically does fairly well at lower Q-depths. It all depends on how you optimize, how you actually approach the design. Some of them work better in straight lines and some of them work better at low Q-depths. Anyway, the IOPS.
Can we talk about
Yes.
Sex,
storage? No, I don't want to talk about that. I'm talking about QDEPs.
Okay.
It's counterproductive.
Okay.
But anyway,
Yes.
the leaps and bounds we've seen in the 5 years. I mean, when the original Intel drive that Alan was made famous for
520?
came out, and I think it was SN80 or something.
X25M.
Whatever.
Oh,
25M.
25M. There you go.
Nice. My brain is mush.
I know the feeling.
How far we've come even with these low-cost NVMe drives. I mean, it's really just stunning, especially considering spinning disks are still a thing.
Which is
I
crazy.
mean, we
So
don't
is
know
my
how
tape
good
drive.
we have it. That's essentially what I'm trying to say. We don't know how good we have it.
Okay,
Because
yes, I
These
agree.
drives
But you know what? We
are
need
fast.
more. It's not good enough that they're faster than
Oh my gosh.
spinning Rust.
You know what? I want a 4 terabyte game drive NVMe so badly, but I'm not willing to pay $800.
Yeah,
No,
that'll
right.
come down. With drives like this, if you can fit 1 terabyte into one package like that, it's going to be so much less expensive to get a 4 terabyte drive just within the next year or so. We would think.
Yeah, I mean, we saw
That
how
would be
cheap
practically speaking, but that's not
665.
opportunistic pricing. They're going to price that very high.
Well, until
For
the 10
now.
terabytes come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then the 4s will be good.
The 8s will push the 4s down. The 16s will push the 8s down.
It may take until 2023, but we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
It just this tells the story. If you're looking at IOPS 4K read, the lowest numbers here at QD1, which is the standard 4K test, and then if you move up to QD4, it catches up with that Lexar drive. It catches up with the Kingston drive mostly, and then if you move up to QD16, you're ahead. So this had better high Q depth performance than even this really good Kingston KC2000 1 terabyte drive. So it's this.
So that
controller,
SMI controller is a next generation controller, but it's low cost.
yes.
Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah. And speaking of costs, I should just get that out of the way and move on. This is a $110 drive at 1 terabyte, so you're a little over that 10 cents per gigabyte
right.
threshold.
That's
And
awesome.
the only problem for it right now, really, as far as Western Digital's product stack goes, is the SN750, which is a fantastic drive. Is it still selling for this? Yeah, it's $135
there
on
are some
Amazon.
workloads that the SN750 really craps its pants on.
Really?
Oh,
I would be
what's
curious.
that?
I mean, I can't remember exactly which one, but there was something about the SN750 that was.
Do you think the 850 that you just got would be similar in performance? You could sort of elicit
I've
that
seen
bad behavior.
reviews, and of course, I don't have an eidetic memory, but the SN850 fixes that from the 750.
Yeah.
And so overall, it's a much better drive, including, up to 1 million IOPS, and a lot of bandwidth. And they did fix some of those corner cases that the SN750 just kind of dropped on its face.
Yeah, I just the mainstream testing that Jim did when the SN750 came out did not. I mean, there weren't any issues that I can remember him talking about from testing, because that was
He
the
was very
second
positive
gen.
about it.
There was a first and second gen version of it. Like there was another product, and then the SN750, the WD Black.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a naming nightmare going on.
Yeah,
with
because
that.
there is a
at that
750.
point.
There's also a second gen, which is the one that we were sampled at CES a couple years ago, and that one had excellent performance across the board. I don't know if he did IOPS. Let's see, random. This is a high Q depth, high thread count though. It's
There's IOPS.
there we go. Here's Q depth one thread, random 4K, and I mean it's below a Samsung. It depends. Samsung
Well, better
was
than a
still the king.
970.
Yeah. They were trading blows with Samsung in some of these tests, which had kind of been the gold standard for a long time, and still is right now. I mean, I think the 980 Pro is about as good as it gets right now, but it's very expensive.
Yeah.
Speaking of very expensive, very quickly I will go through, let's do 2 minutes on this. Another add-in board. Or actually, I think this is the first add-in review.
I'm
I've
not
done.
going to interrupt you. I'm not going to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to interrupt you right here. Not interrupting.
Is this what not interrupting sounds like?
Okay.
Silent
Well, we did.
interruption.
Okay, I'm not sure what that was. Very quickly, Sapphire NITRO Plus. If you're familiar with Sapphire's graphics cards, they have the Pulse series. They have the NITRO Plus series. These are higher end cards. It has a huge triple fan cooler on it. It has RGBs on it. It has a lighted logo. It has a lighted RGB strip on the top, ARGB, and a lighted logo on the back plate. This is not an inexpensive card. It is apparently a $700 version of the RX 6800, the non-XT version of the 6800, by the way.
That's a premium of how much over the
$120.
$120 premium.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So I don't know if that's actually correct, because to I think Tech Power Up referenced it at 640, but didn't have a review. I think they were just, I don't know if they were estimating or what, but the only listing I can find for this is at 699. So, and here it is, pictured next to a plant, by the way. If you're watching the video, yeah, and this has a slight clock speed increase over a stock card. It has the
I don't know, Brett, you got something to say about that picture? I think there's some improvements you could make on it.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's go back to that plant picture.
The plant photo. All right, hold on. Every audio listeners love this.
You know what? I think the red is a little bit too intense.
Out of focus.
Maybe you should have dialed. Well, he's got a bokeh going on, so I approve of that. His depth of field is actually pretty reasonable in that he's got the card tilted, and actually the front fan and the back fan are actually fairly in focus. The front fan's a little bit, so your depth of field is
the middle
only
fan
like
spinning.
It looks like it is. That's just a reflection.
It certainly does.
It's like it
it's
is.
a bit of a reflection to it, but your red is a little bit too like you've delved into the unrealistic red zone. Do you know what I mean?
That was intentional. That's an artistic choice, Brett. But let's move on. I did intentionally.
I'm gonna think about this for the rest of the night.
I did intentionally go crazy.
You know
with
what?
the
I
background
can tell that
saturation.
picture was photoshopped by the quality of the pixels of that red.
That's what I'm thinking.
All I did was increase saturation by like 80%.
Okay.
Only likely story.
Only 80%. It's almost double the saturation of the original photo.
I'm
I
not
went
sure that we
crazy.
can
I'm
believe.
not lying. This is
sure we
way
can believe anything.
oversaturated here.
We can believe anything past that point.
It's just Lightroom. I didn't. use
Okay,
any
someone
Photoshop
put
here.
way too much effort on that backplate.
Look how busy this backplate is. And you still have this
It is
pass-through area.
extremely busy.
But you know what? It looks really cool when the light is on.
The holes in the upper left-hand corner? It's like, why are they there?
What do you mean?
Those
For passing air through
No.
or something.
No,
Look, Brett,
that's
who's
solid
passing
board.
gas? Okay, go back to that previous picture.
Okay.
Let's talk about the capacitors on the back.
Yeah, I know.
that.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's nuts.
Let's count them together.
That's-
Unlike an NVIDIA
All right.
card where you can do
One,
that.
two, more
We
than
can
two.
have 6
Josh.
big ones. You've got
Josh, is that more than the
120.
9 on the back of your 3080? You've got like 9, right? 9?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's someone vomited capacitors on that, and I approve.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Right.
AMD's chip. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, it's a big card. 2 8-pin connectors, of course. That's the same as the stock.
I'm sorry, were those standard 8-pin connectors? Just wanted to
Yes, they
realize.
are standard. You have
Okay.
some. I think you
Heat
have
pipes.
ARGB out on this. Or no, you control that through the Tricks software. Sapphire has a software app called Tricks with 2 X's. Anyway, there's another thing about the design. There's a BIOS selector switch. So if you do a lot of heavy overclocking, that's always nice to have because you can rescue yourself by switching over to the other BIOS. There's a performance and a quiet mode. It alters the fan curves. Performance. I'm not going to get too heavy into this because it's a 6800. It is slightly faster than our AMD provided reference card. The best example of this was Dirt 5, where at both 1440 and 4K, it offered 3 FPS better performance on average. This is an average of 3 runs of each card. We're talking 98.10 frames per second with the reference card and 101.84, and this is at 1440 Ultra in Dirt 5. So a little free performance boost there. Well, not free because the card is $100 more than a reference card, but you can't buy any of them anyway. So what does it matter?
I think this is a point that you should be making over and over again. That
I do.
This is all fantasy.
I said
But you do in your write-up. You do.
Right. In the write-up, I said, look, we could talk about the price, but that's fantasy right now. And here is a very busy graph to study.
This is a great graph. You should explain this one.
It's like, okay, here's a bunch of GPU-Z logging dumped into one graph. So at the top here, the white color line is the clocks. And this is through 10 iterations of Metro Exodus benchmark at 4K high. And clocks were about 2250, a little bit higher than that, hitting 2300, almost hitting 2300, 2250-ish. And then you have the fan. You can see how the fan kind of rises up and then lowers itself and hits like 1250 to, let's see, it ends up, it jumps up to 1550 and then it drops back down to the 1200s. It's a very quiet card under sustained load. because of this behavior that I noticed. And it was pulling cards rated at 290 watts. GPU-C does not report all of the different card power numbers that you need. It does GPU chip power draw for AMD. It doesn't do like the VRM in memory. So I should have done wall power on this, but I didn't. Hotspot and temperature numbers. I did a quick breakdown because this chart is incomprehensible. GPU clocks topped out at 2269. GPU chip power topped out at 219 watts, which means VRM and memory weren't counted because this is like a 290 watt card. GPU temps hit 75C in a 21C room. GPU hotspot hit 90. Compare that to our reference card that's 2 degrees better under load. But the reason it wasn't better than that is that the fan wanted to adjust itself down to the 1200 range, 1200 RPM range, where if you were to set it up higher, obviously you get a lot better temps. Sound, though, this is where that last Nitro Plus I tested way back in, I guess it was last year, the 5700 XT Nitro Plus. That thing was the quietest GPU I think I'd ever tested. And this one is similar, 33.2 dBA when I tested during those Metro Exodus runs. This
Was it even on?
Yeah, this is with the SPL meter 12 inches away from the leading edge of the card.
That's like quieter than my room.
Unfortunately, it is quiet enough to hear electrical component noise on the card, which is, it's something that affects these AMD GPUs. It does. So it doesn't matter which vendor it is.
Is that a nicer way of saying coil whine?
I don't call it coil whine because it doesn't sound like that to me. I've heard coil whine.
What does it sound like?
This sounds like kind of a grinding, chirping sound.
That's weird.
See, now if you recorded this, our audio listeners could actually help.
Yeah, it's like
Yep.
like dial-up noises.
Really?
Mixed dial-up noises. And if you are in a menu where it has like no frame cap, you'll hear a squeal. Like it'll start to whine. Like if you think about
regular coil whine, yeah.
Yeah, like Unigen Heaven benchmark, where when you exit and it shows you everybody who made the benchmark, that thing has always made every card scream.
Yeah.
And that closing screen in that benchmark, I did run it, and it was ridiculous. Like it just starts to shriek, and you just have to hit the escape key to make that screen go away. But that's not the only card that does that. Anyway, very, very quiet.
Yeah, it makes the sound of cutting down a tree in the forest.
Yeah, it's fine because it's very quiet.
It just shrieks.
It's very quiet.
You can hardly hear it.
Which makes you want to cut down more trees.
If the tree would just fall.
Let me just wrap this up. If you crank the fans up to 50%, I did this in the Radeon software. I changed the fan profiles. It went up to 39.3 decibels, which is still really quiet. So I like the idea of just cranking up the fans anyway, so the card runs cooler. But it was up to about 58 decibels when I cranked them up to 75%, which is never going to happen in regular use unless you do it manually. And the conclusion here is basically, and here's that nice picture of look at the back plate lighting in effect.
I like this picture. I like it because you brought in the cooler from a previous review. It's the intense reds. I like them this time. I like the
red
lighting
extensions here.
Top. Yeah, I like the lighting across the top, that sort of yellowish tinge. And I actually like the sort of pixelization I'm getting in the lower right-hand corner below the Radeon. It's like giving me that sort of gritty sense. This is a Cyberpunk 2077 picture.
That was what I was going for. And by the way, if you want to know how to make this photo yourself at home, take a regular photo, increase the saturation by about 75%, and then in Lightroom, increase clarity by about 50%. And you'll get this.
Then dunk it in water.
And then add about a 20% vignette to the outside edges.
You know what? I wouldn't have caught that unless you'd said it.
Yeah, there's a vignette in effect there. Anyway, it's expensive, but you can't buy it anyway, so who cares? But I liked the card. It's very quiet. It's a little bit higher performing than a reference card. If you're out shopping and this is available, you're not going to be disappointed by it. And the aesthetics depend on your personal preferences, obviously. But I called it ARGB infused.
And frankly, availability is going to really trump a lot of other aspects of cards right at this particular moment if you're really shopping right now. Unless you want to wait, just wait.
What do you mean want?
Maybe in February.
I'm sorry, did I say want? I meant need with an insatiable desire.
Need.
Speaking of need,
Before moving on to one
Yes.
other thing,
yes,
what are the books behind you, Sebastian?
this is the Oxford Sherlock Holmes.
Really?
Ah,
Nice.
So we have,
Did you pull those out here?
this is A Study in Scarlet, as you can see. This
Yeah.
is the 1990, I believe it's the first printing. No, 1993.
no, it wouldn't have
1993.
been the first printing.
Well,
Yeah,
the first
yeah.
Oxford, Sherlock Holmes printing. Anyway,
When
Yeah,
will there be a
very nice,
reading?
very nice.
Will there be a reading eventually? Or?
I have never been satisfied with my Sherlock Holmes voice. I think the best I've ever heard was on BBC Radio, and I'm forgetting his name right now.
Jeremy
but
Brett.
Jeremy Brett's very good, and I love those.
Basil.
Basil Rathbone's
Basil's the best.
I enjoy Basil Rathbone's
Basil
rapid,
Rathbone was the best.
his clipped rapid delivery of Holmes
This
was good.
staccato delivery.
Yes.
Anyway,
But, yeah. I can't remember the guy who did it on
moving
BBC
along.
Radio.
Sorry,
Dang
that
it.
was 30 seconds. We got to talk about other things.
We got to talk
because
about
it's late.
picks of
Josh,
the week.
great ask. Great ask, Josh.
I do have a great ass.
That's not what I said, but sure.
Okay.
All right, and now Josh.
That was
Josh's sweet ass.
T.
God.
I used a cheese grater ass.
Okay, I don't know what's happening.
Crying.
We've lost control. I don't even know.
I'm crying. I don't even know what happened.
Lost?
I never had any control. I'm just a
Am I
stooge who
first
sits here
on
and
the
produces
pick of the week?
Yeah, you. I don't know.
You are.
Take the
why
first
not?
pick. Take the first pick and run with it.
Okay, you know what? This new this new TV came out only a few weeks ago, and it's available now. And it's a 55-inch LG OLED for only $1,300, and it looks like it's a pretty solid thing. 120 hertz native, right? OLED, G-Sync, and FreeSync.
Oh.
And it's tempting for that price, especially
Dolby
if you want
Atmos.
to dip your toes into OLED.
You will
I'd rather have
never
a 65, but 55 is not bad.
just sit closer. Sit closer to the 55.
Yeah,
It's just
well, I
as
mean, I'm
good.
sit close anyway. I want the whole.
You know, The Expanse was released today. I might need to order this
was.
TV
Yeah,
just
there's
so
new
that I
season.
can continue to watch The Expanse.
I'm sure that you
Yeah,
can
but
get this
this
TV
is
at
one of
local
the
Microcenter.
cheapest of the big, solid OLEDs that I've seen yet. It's a new
Yeah.
model.
Yeah.
Now,
And,
Sebastian,
kinda cool.
despite your obvious slight, which I heard,
What slight? What
you
are talking
cannot get this cheaper at Micro Center right now. It's
Oh,
actually
yeah.
cheaper at new.
Well,
It's
I think
actually
LG
cheaper
sets the pricing
at
for
Newegg.
authorized resellers like Samsung does. So
Good point.
And this
Good point.
is I brought this up a while back. Their 55-inch OLEDs have been selling for under $1,400. Like $1,350 was the last time I saw them on sale. This is
It's a good
$1,296.
price. It's a good price.
That is cheaper than their 48-inch, which is $1,500. So unless you need the smaller size for some reason, I believe this has pretty much the same feature set. If it does have the high refresh, because I have an OLED TV. I bought it back in 2016. It's the B6 OLED from LG, and it's only 60 hertz. So
what size do you have?
this is
65.
120 native.
I paid $3,000 for that TV, and that was significantly discounted.
Your wife should kill you.
She approved the purchase,
She
And
still
I-
should kill you.
and before she could change her mind, I was out the door and driving to Indiana
Right.
to buy
Yep.
this thing
Yeah.
Let's
from
compare that to the
H.H.
couch.
Gregg, which subsequently went out of business.
They did, I know. But
I
let's
couldn't
compare
return
that
it.
to
Yeah,
They
no,
were
no,
gone.
no.
How about
This,
the
this
couch?
is HDR. This is HDR 10 I
And
think,
Dolby
the
Vision.
original.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
it's-
I was looking for.
It is there. It's everything.
Has all
that
the bells and whistles.
it does, and it's $1,200.
Just do it. You'll never regret it.
Josh,
I
with that
regret
voice-
it already.
With that voice, you've almost convinced me.
You know what? What I'm going to do is, for me personally, I'm going to wait until the end of January and check the price on this.
Oh,
Yeah.
after Christmas. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, the 2022 model will be out.
Things drop down, and they have the Q1 panic of when you want to buy stuff, and they're like, okay, this isn't selling enough. Let's drop the price down because nobody buying in Q1, and we got to move stuff because we've got to start raising the prices in Q2 when people start buying stuff again after the school year. Yeah.
Let's drop trow on this.
That's an unfortunate choice of words. Jeremy has our next pick.
I didn't even say it. As far as you know.
Jeremy, save us.
Are you a Canadian? Did you find yourself buying Microsoft software in, the last couple of years, specifically between December 23rd, 1998 and March 11th, 2010? Not just operating systems and not just OEM operating systems, but also a machine attached to it, or Office, or any of the other wonderful products that Redmond offers you. Because Canada's finally gotten a class action lawsuit, and you can now make a claim on what is one of the shadiest frickin' looking websites I have seen in a long time, but is actually legit, and try and get a little bit of money back from the overcharging that Microsoft did to us at that time. They've also decided that, well, chances are you didn't keep your receipts from 15 years ago, and they aren't really demanding much in the way of proof that you've bought it. So, give it a shot. I'm due for about $26 myself. I'm going to put that towards some beer, I think. So, yeah, give it a shot. You in the US, you already had your shot a couple of years back, and you actually probably got more than we did. But hey, it's worth looking into if you're from Canada, and you're a Microsoft addict.
It's like 2 hours of minimum wage, so just do it. Take the 15 minutes.
Jeremy, I noticed they took the typical out of paying out, but denying all wrongdoing.
Correct.
Upstanding of them.
Right.
I think they just found some spare change in the couch somewhere and fine, give it to them.
Pretty much.
Brett, you have our final pick. Well, I'll throw something out there, but yeah, the final.
I do. You should throw something out there, Sebastian.
I will throw out my recommendation for listening to the BBC radio Sherlock Holmes. But yes, continue.
Hey, that would be great. So I've been moving my headset back and forth between my main computer here in front of me and the games computer that I've been playing around with. And I'm like, I need another set of headphones to move back and forth. And
so you went to an Apple store or OWC, didn't you?
I did not, but I will eventually. We'll be able to tease me about that at some other point. But this is a Mac-related company, MacSales.com, that I get an email from, and I happen to notice partway down a set of headphones that will plug into a Mac or a PC if you have a headphone jack, that is. And it's an Audio-Technica.
Here they are.
Stop.
Okay.
I did not.
Sorry.
You know what? You're gonna get you're gonna get a turd in the email.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Audio-Technica.
Yeah, it's. I'm wearing a set of Audio-Technicas now. I do like them. This is a different set of Audio-Technicas, the ATH AD900X, which is normally priced close to $200, $160, $180.
69. Nice.
I know.
Cheap.
Josh,
Nice.
out loud, all together now, $69.99.
Nice.
Yeah, very nice.
I've
Refurbs,
never
though.
understood what that meant, but I don't.
Well,
I probably don't want to.
We can explain it with some photographs later.
Nope.
No.
No.
What I'm saying here is this is a reasonably good deal. The only fallback on these, or the drawback on these, might be the head support system has not received universally rave reviews. Apparently, it depends on the shape of your head.
The head support system on these is amazing. It's basically flawless.
Unless it's not.
Now these,
Wait, unless you're telling me.
No, I have the 8700Xs, and I've used those for years.
So do you have like the wings that sort of come up from the edges?
Yeah.
Okay, and what do you think of them?
They're great. They're the most comfortable headphones I own.
So you would wholeheartedly recommend these AD900Xs?
These are just a slightly, I don't know if it's driver matching or what's different between the 900s and the 700s.
The sound quality of these are basically reviewed that it's very high quality, but they're open air, so remember that.
Right, yeah.
These are
everybody around you will hear if you're using any of these open air.
Absolutely.
8700, 800. They're interesting. The design is interesting. They have a slightly angled driver. Mm-hmm. So it's not just what is the actual term for it? When you're listening with headphones,
it's not directly
stereo.
penetrate your ears, but
it doesn't.
Sneaks in through
Instead
the
of it directly driving sound into your ears and creating a binaural sound, it actually sounds like front stereo because they're angled. Mm-hmm. But they're very wide, open sounding headphones. They're almost like sitting in a room and listening to a bookshelf speakers. Yes, very airy.
But the bass is good still. The bass doesn't leak out. It's still very tight, very good. It's not muddy.
It's controlled, but it is not as extended as a lot of better like closed back options would be.
Closed back headphone would be.
If you're a bass head, you get the closed back. If you like the airy and the sound staging and all that stuff, then you get the open back.
Or you occasionally get people trying to talk to you around you, then you might want an open back.
I can wear these over both ears and hear everything that's going on.
I have no idea what they're talking about, Josh.
What?
I have no idea what they're talking about.
We're going to talk about colors.
$69 is cheap. The cheapest I think I ever found, the 700s, was for about $90 on Amazon at one point.
And these are the 900s. They do have a 1000 series. But these are the 900
what
series.
The difference between the 700 and the 900 is. It's the same driver.
I don't know what the difference between the 900 and the 1000 series is, but these drivers look very high quality. If you're in the market at all, I suggest you try them out.
Yeah, I mean, for $69, I mean,
exactly.
Just buy them to resell at that price. I mean, come on.
Because you can sell them. You can sell them for 120.
Yeah. Oh, here comes Josh.
Anyway, this is a nice fat pick on my part. So go take a look.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I looked it up and it was
smell like 69.
Okay.
Josh, why?
Doesn't smell like success either.
No.
On that note,
go on?
Everybody, please tune in next week. Wait, no, don't tune in next week.
Josh, where did you put the comma? Where did you put the comma in that sentence?
Yeah.
Please
hey, you know what?
Yours
just press the button.
Yours is making sound too. And I'm not slapping
it. I did it on purpose.
Look, I haven't slapped it yet.
Create. And guess what? I didn't hear that.
You're a slapper.
You're
totally a slapper.
It's because this is a capacitive touch area on the top of this microphone, as you can see here. If I just
you know what? Okay, stop doing the Josh look and start paying attention to how you're slapping the microphone. Because you do it with authority. You might as well get the mirrored sunglasses on there.
Mm-hmm.
Little badge.
Yeah. That's all. That's my note. It's my note for you, Brett. As producer of the show, I would like to hear a little less slapping of the microphone.
Hey, Brett, I still like you, though. Do you know why?
As Jeremy types away.
Because he signs the
I'm
checks.
just sort of trying to block all of you out right now.
Oh, okay.